Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. So this movie has been dubbed by a lot of Star Trek fans as the best Star Trek film ever. And some sci-fi fans say that this is probably the best movie ever. I would probably, I'd say there's a case to be made here. It's a classic story of revenge. It's a good story. It's slow-paced, but it's not slow where you're bored. It's just, it takes its time to get to the climax of a film, which I think is something that's missing today. Everybody wants the explosions and the quick satisfaction of what's going to happen. It's almost like they want to skip to the end of the chapter of a book to see what's going to happen. And this movie doesn't do that. Like, it takes all the characters and it slowly builds to the final battle. It's almost like the whole time you're kind of getting on the edge of your seat because you're like, when is it going to attack? When's it going to attack? And then when he finally does attack, and Kirk escapes to the nebula, like you're still sitting there on the edge of your seat. It has so much world building. From meeting Carol Marcus to David Marcus to Saavik, like you're meeting all these characters, but they feel like they're established in that world. They don't feel like Commander Decker and Ilia did in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, where you're like, you just wrote these into the movie because you needed, quick characters. Like, these people feel like they're really in this universe. And this universe, I'd say this is probably the first time that the Star Trek universe actually feels fully realized, like fully lived in, if that makes sense. You, of course, have the new Monster Maroon uniforms, all those divisions and everything. Like, everything seems to make sense. This feels like Starfleet is realized as an organization instead of the brightly colored, substitute, what division you want for, the red, is it engineering or is this security? I don't know, just by looking at a color. Like, it's kind of cheap doing it that way, but here, like, every color is a division, and I like that because it feels very military-like, one that's based on, keeping borders safe, but yet exploration. Something that, you could see, our own military doing, much like that, as opposed to, like I said, the kind of pajamas, brightly colored pajamas that the TV show had, So this was a really good film. It brought back Khan, as everybody loves. A lot of people think that he's like the best Trek villain. I kind of reserve that for Dukat. I think Dukat was more fleshed out, and that's the only reason why he kind of takes that top notch. But I think if you're looking at, performance-wise of a 2-hour movie, I think, Khan really does satisfy that, especially in the movies. I don't think any other villain has done better in the movies than Ricardo Montalban. They used a lot of the recycled shots, like CGI stuff from Star Trek: The Motion Picture, and the sets were very minimalized. Like, this movie was shot on a budget, but it doesn't feel small. It feels very large in scope, but like I said, it feels very realized. When you get to that space station outside the Mutara Nebula, it feels claustrophobic, but for the right reasons. Almost like the movie Alien, where you're on that. You're on that space station, or that spaceship, and you're not really sure what's where, and it feels cramped, crowded, almost like you couldn't get a good night's sleep if you slept in the wrong, the wrong place, But this, it feels large from the Genesis planet. Information that they have, being a Secrets of Starfleet, like that's something that an organization in government would do, so that feels very realistic. The change in tone is something that I think was needed for this. If they had another debacle like the motion picture was, where they're just it's just as beautiful as it was, they didn't give anything of substance, whereas this, it gives so much substance. And the thing about this is that not only does it give substance, but the visuals are just as good. You don't have 50 million torpedoes flying by like you had in Star Trek Nemesis, where it was just, explosions and lasers and torpedoes nonstop, where it's like, fuck, I don't care. You're overstimulated. This was more, every torpedo mattered. Every phaser hit mattered. Case in point is the nephew, of Scotty. You know, which, although it's kind of dumb, you went to the bridge instead of sick bay. You know, I mean, you should have gone to sick bay first. That would have made more sense. You know, I understand why, dramatically you did this, but but I mean, he stayed there, and but that one torpedo is what caused his death, and that, to me, is what this film succeeded at. Was, it made everything fully realized of, those things matter. It's not just, fire phasers, pew pew pew. It was, everything. It had its results. Consequences, mind you. So anyway, that being said, of course we have the death of Spock, which everybody's was up in arms at the time about. You had the fake version of Spock, and then you had the real version of Spock. The fake version was put in there to kind of throw off audiences' expectations, and then finally get to the real one. Thank God they didn't live in the day of the internet. That would have been spoiled. But everyone remembers this as the movie where Spock died, but I choose to think of this movie as the first of the Star Trek trilogy, because really, when you watch this movie, it's the first part of a third chapter. Star Trek 2, 3, and 4 really do go hand in hand. I mean, they're good on their own, but you really need to watch them. You need to watch them back to back, much like the Star Wars movies. You can watch them on their own, but you understand and get a complete story, together. So I don't see this really as, I don't define this as the one where Spock dies. I see this as the one that started the trilogy. And I think that it's nice that Star Trek has its own trilogy, and it's one that I prefer over Star Wars. To me, this was my franchise to go to as a kid. It made me feel hope for the future. It gave me, a feeling of I can have friends like that too, like Bones and Spock, and even though they may not agree, they're still friends. Like it gave a lot of hope, and I see a lot of that here. Even though it's not, they don't have 20-minute conversations about friendship, but you can still feel the bond. So to me, I think this movie, it goes out of its way to be something fresh, while still trying to hold on to what was established before and be respectful. And that's the key word there, respectful. It wasn't trying to do, just a regurgitation of the original series, and it wasn't, it wasn't doing what like Star Trek Into Darkness did, which was let's just rip this off, let's just rip something else off. It did a fresh idea. It took a villain that we knew, and continued that story, which again, very smart. Some of the other Star Trek movies should have done something similar, because it's a very good model to go with. So, but anyway, those are just my thoughts. Comment below, let me know yours. And be genuine, be safe, and keep on geeking on, guys.